This is a good week to be looking at fire prevention. Today's topic is summer fire prevention because now's the time. This is prime time for fires in the state of Utah. We've gone multiple weeks without appreciable rain. We have hot, dry temperatures, humidities are really low, and we've got a lot of fuel out there, both in the wildland area as well as around our buildings and around our homes and communities and all of those things. And we are just right for some big wildfires. As well as structure fires and fires in our operations. And so we think this is an important time to talk about fire prevention and some things that we can do to prevent those fires from happening. Because the surest way to fight a fire is to prevent it. If the fire never starts, we don't have to go to those grand lengths to be able to fight it. And so that's the goal in today's session today is to focus on prevention of these fires. Fire is the original peril. It's what they originally wrote insurance about. Think about your life. Has your life been impacted by fire? I think of a few near misses that I've had in my life that could have been really bad had it gone another way. And fire is a major thing. Every year there are about 1.4 million fires, close to 4,000 deaths. And if you look at the injuries, you can many times that 4,000 for the number of injuries that are bad enough that people have to seek medical attention for that. And an average year, we're looking at about $23 billion in losses. Now, there have been some notable years recently when we've had California fires, multiple California fires over the last decade that have increased that number a lot because the amount of property destruction that's happened from those. So we know it's a problem. In recent years, in the state of Utah, we've been spared from really significant property losses. But this year, we've already seen, even early in the season, property loss as well as significant wildfire damage around the state of Utah. So I think we've got a challenging year ahead of us. We've got 2 or 3 months now of really risky time, and hopefully we can get some weather to come in without a lot of lightning and some good rain to help us that way. But we can't rely on that. We've got to rely on ourselves to be able to prevent those. Fires come from a lot of different directions. External stuff from wildland. A lot of times we're on that interface between wildland and our urban environments. Fireworks, we got that coming up. Arson, when people do dumb, bad things. And then there are the internal causes of fires. When we do dumb things, we light candles in our office and they catch on fire. We weld where we shouldn't weld. We use a grinder where we shouldn't do that. Our electrical equipment isn't maintained right and causes fires, and dealing with flammable liquids are a constant cause of fires. Well, what does it take to make a fire? It's really 3 things: heat, fuel, and oxygen. And oxygen is all around us all the time. So the things that we really control are the fuel and the ignition source, or the heat. Well, what do we talk about? Fuel? It could be a lot of things. Combustibles. Let's talk about those fuels. Fuel is everywhere. Some fuels are more hazardous than others. Some are flammable. They readily ignite without a whole lot of help. Others take a little more heat to make those things ignite. Those would be combustibles. So paper versus gasoline. Paper would be a combustible. Gasoline would be a flammable. Combustibles are all around us. I've got some paper sitting on my desk, not too many. I think I'm doing all right today. That's not always the case. But think about those things. What do you have around your office, your shop, your work environment, around the outside of your buildings that could be classified as combustibles? Do we have stacks of pallets? Do we have cardboard? Do we have papers? Just junk around that could contribute to a fire. Flammables are a little more that way. So think about that. What is around your stuff and will it burn? We don't want to be in this situation where the fire department has to do extreme measures to protect our property because we've put combustibles all around it. So let's talk flammable liquids. These things have a flash point that's really low, below 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Common things that we deal with are gasoline, alcohols, even hand sanitizer can be considered a flammable liquid because it has alcohol in it. Paints, thinners, chemicals, all of those things can fit into this category. Flammable gases. Two notable ones that we deal with are propane gas and acetylene. And we could also throw in there natural gas as well as part of our system that we use to heat our buildings, to maybe operate cooking appliances, those types of things. They all have the potential with fires because of their low flash point. It doesn't take a lot to get these things burning. And with these gases, they also have the potential for explosions. If they happen to fill a space before they find an ignition source, then it can cause our building really to blow into pieces. All right. Other things we want to talk about are oxidizers. So we have things like oxygen. That's the prime oxidizer that we will ever deal with probably, and it doesn't actually burn itself, but it causes other things to burn. It is a reactant in this reaction that happens where things combust, and it causes things to burn hotter, or causes them to burn when they normally wouldn't burn readily. And so you think about your acetylene torch. If you just turn on that torch, just the acetylene burning, it's just kind of a yellow flame and there's soot coming off of it, and it's kind of not a very impressive flame until you turn that other knob and the oxygen goes in, and then it gets blue and extremely hot. And so managing oxygen is important. Well, ask ourselves, where do we use oxygen? Well, it's easy with the oxyacetylene torch kit. Make sure you turn the oxygen off when you're not using it. But what about people using oxygen? They can also be a source of fires if that oxygen isn't managed well. Unfortunately, some of the saddest fire situations that we see are people who may be on supplemental oxygen and they fall asleep and their oxygen fills their bedding, and then they wake up and light a cigarette, or there's some other ignition source and starts fires in their bedding. So definitely oxidizers we need to keep on our mind as well. All right, get this to move ahead. Ignition sources. What are those ignition sources? Well, it can be something as simple as static electricity. As this guy steps down there, you can see as he's sliding over that roll of material, he is creating a static electric charge, and when he steps down, it ignites the flammable vapors from that foam that was in the trailer there. Other things, open sources of flame, like candles, open burning. Pilot lights on our equipment, sparks from welding or grinding, friction. Our equipment's working. If we don't have it lubricated right, or we have a bearing go bad or something like that, or chains dragging. I've got safety chains on my trailers, and if I don't adjust those up short enough, they may be dragging down the road and producing sparks that could ignite vegetation on the sides of the road. And then static electricity, hard to deal with that. We've got to deal with dissipating charge. Fireworks. It's Independence Week. And we're going to have a lot of celebrations this week, and many of those will involve fireworks. Now, I love this. I love to go watch fireworks. I enjoy the show. I enjoy the booms and all the things that go around that. But this is also a week when we can have some major issues, and we've seen those in recent years with various shows around the state of Utah and around the country and world. So let's just talk about that briefly. fireworks in our communities, we should look at our local ordinances and controls. And if we're in a situation to be setting those ordinances, we need to be smart about that. Where do we allow fireworks to be discharged? The best case scenario would be we'd find a nice green grassy park with no buildings around it and lots of space, and that's where people would ignite their fireworks, because the chance of fire goes way down. Certainly, we want to look at that urban wildfire in wildland interface and keep those fireworks away from there, because that's where those fires can get away from us. Then when we go on to fireworks shows, if your organization decides we're going to have a firework display, we're going to pay a contractor to come in and perform that show, or we're going to have our staff do it. There are some considerations on both of those. If you're bringing a contractor in, certainly you need to have a contract that spells out their responsibilities, who's responsible for what, indemnification language in there to say who's responsible if something goes wrong. If you bring a contractor in, you need to secure a certificate of insurance from them, naming your organization as an additional insured. So that protects you under their policy. So if something really goes wrong, that's the first layer of protection that you have is for them, because if they're doing the show, they're probably going to be the ones responsible for the bad stuff that happened there. If we make the decision that our staff will be setting off those fireworks because, hey, they're firefighters, they obviously are experts on on fireworks, well, that's probably not the case. But if we decide to go that way, there are some things that we have to ensure as well. Number one, on any of these shows, you need to let the trust know. If you're insured with the trust, that's part of your annual renewal, is letting us know what special events you're going to be having, and if you're having fireworks with that. That's part of your insurance coverage, is you letting us know what you're doing. You need to have at least one certified shooter over this display of fireworks. That certified shooter gets that certification by attending training through the state fire marshal's office. And they also have, in addition to that training, they have to have some experience as well. Just because you're a firefighter doesn't make you a certified shooter. And so that's something that we definitely need to look at. One of the things that we really want to avoid are sending some people to Evanston or some nearby state that has a little better fireworks than we have, and purchasing those things and bringing them in to put on our own show. Let's make sure we're above board and we're doing some serious planning ahead of doing these shows, that we do it in the right location. We keep people away from the display, and whenever you're setting off fireworks, you look around in whatever 100 yards and say, if everything burns down in this area, am I okay with that? That's the area where you should look at that. Let's not do some questionable things like we've seen in years past of where we're working on those fireworks. Don't do that inside of your buildings. Don't do things like taking your fireworks show on the road, putting fireworks on a trailer and driving them around town. That can lead to, and has led to, some really serious consequences and some unfortunate injuries and damage to property as well. All right, I spend too much time on that, but it's an important thing, and it's an important week for that. All right, make sure you realize that your fire risks are yours. The fire risks here in North Salt Lake, where I am today, are very different than those for those of you in Washington County right now. You live in an area where the fuels are very different. But if you live in Monticello, it is a different fire risk there than it is elsewhere. Some places, like here in Davis County, we get east winds that can be really hazardous for fire conditions. Other parts of the state have different fuel loads, and so you need to know what those risks are and plan accordingly. Know those and address them specific to what your concerns are around that. Whoops, I went too far there. Let's talk fire prevention. Um, here are the list of the different topics that we need to work on, and we're going to hit each one of those in turn. Fire prevention policy. So under OSHA and other codes as well, we're required to have a fire prevention plan, as well as having emergency evacuation procedures in the event that we do have an emergency, particularly a fire. And so having a written plan and sharing that with our staff and training them on what should they do, where do I go if the building catches on fire, other things, what do we do, what are our rules? We need to establish those rules in writing. Where can people smoke? And we also need to think about that. How do I collect cigarette butts? How do we ensure that an errant cigarette butt doesn't light up the vegetation that's around our building? And so plans around that, and some places we should certainly have bans on smoking, because it doesn't go along with the type of environment that we have. Space heaters are things where we can get into trouble as well. We'll talk about that more as it gets hotter, but that's something we ought to have in our plan as well. Barbecue grills. It's great to have a barbecue grill where you work. You guys know the folks at the trust. We like to barbecue. We do it a lot. But where we have those grills and how we go about utilizing those, even some basic things like you turn the propane off when you're not using the barbecue grill, those are simple rules that we ought to write down in our policies. Okay, servicing our equipment to ensure it's in good shape as well. Open burning. I want to have kind of an open, frank statement on this. In the state of Utah, in most counties, we have the ability to do open burning during certain times of year. You can go out and burn off vegetation for certain reasons. And being a farmer growing up, we did a lot of burning. But as a local government agency, we need to look at this and take a really serious look. Here's my take on this. Number one rule is don't do it. We've had many significant incidents that have happened around the state from open burning. Well, we were just burning some weeds out by the shop, and the wind came up and it got away, and we burned down our neighbor's house. Or shed, or whatever it is that we got into. This is really risky behavior, and we should avoid it unless we've really got some controls in place. So what would that be if we do decide to do open burning? And I don't recommend it. You need to make sure you have that burn permit. That's a legal requirement for doing that. You have to ensure that we have proper clearing index for air quality and all of that stuff. Make sure the weather is appropriate. If I've got wind out there when I'm burning, that complicates things, and so I shouldn't be lighting the match when the wind's blowing. Location is the most important thing when it comes to this. If I'm out in the middle of the desert and there's nothing but dirt for miles around, and I've got a pile of tumbleweeds where I need to do some work, well, that might be an area where you might consider that open burning, because it really can't go anywhere else. But if I'm in the middle of town, or I'm in a state where we've got red flags around from fuel, winds, low humidity, temperatures, all of those things, keep the matches put away during those times. There's a time and a space, but in general, let's not do that. And what controls do I have? If I have a problem with this, do I have the capability to put the fire out? And if you don't do it. Okay. Hot work program. Hot work is anything like welding, cutting, grinding, anything that makes a spark or makes significant heat. This could be done by our staff, or it could be done by a contractor that comes into our building to work on the HVAC unit. When that person climbs up on the roof with their bag of tools, I'm here to tell you there's probably a torch in there. There's probably a grinder in there. Are they going to be doing hot work? Well, we don't know that unless we set a rule and we agree on that with them. We have a hot work program here, and if you're going to do hot work, you've got to secure a permit from us first, and that permit is going to ensure where we do it, if it's appropriate to do it. Specific controls are in place, so those sparks can't get to where they are going to reach combustibles, or they're going to find a spot where they can smolder over time. We need to protect things that we don't want to have exposed to these sparks. So that may be through fire blankets. Sometimes we may be using wet sand or things that will prevent fire. Um, and also we need to have a fire watch. Have those fire prevention methods in place, have a fire watch after the fire, or we're going through and intentionally looking to see if there are any possibilities that a fire is going to happen. And this should involve our contractors. So I spent more time on that than I should, but if you're watching this on YouTube, somewhere up here, there's going to be a link to a YouTube video that we did specifically on HOTWRX and where HOTWRK and where we go through the details on that. So check that one out. Think of your storage of your materials. Let's reduce the amount of combustibles that we are storing. If I've got stacks of pallets out in the back 40 and I have no use for those pallets, get rid of them. That's just an opportunity for a fire to start. We get a spark there. We get somebody that wants to cause a scene, and they can walk out there with a match and light those on fire. We're just giving them the opportunity to do that. So if we don't have need for that stuff, let's get rid of it. If we do have need for it, let's think about where we're storing it. If I take that same pile of pallets away from the dirt lot that has a lot of cheatgrass out there and I put it out in the middle of a concrete pad, well, the risk that we have goes way down. Even if those pallets do catch on fire, it's not going to spread from there because we have a good buffer around it. So think about that. Where do I going to put that stuff? And when we look at these common combustibles, tires, plastics, cardboard, paper, pallets, all of that, think about handling those fuels. All right. Store your flammable gases outside of the building. Store your flammable liquids outside of the building. Oh, and then I threw this one on here. Hoarder interventions. Over my time at the trust, I've seen a number of situations where we had a staff member who had a hard time throwing things away and parting with certain things. And that leads to a lot of problems from a safety standpoint, slip, trips, and fall hazards, but it's also a major fire hazard as well. If you've got a whole bunch of stuff stacked up, the chance that we have a fire goes way up. And the fuel load is higher, so that fire is going to be hotter and it's going to do more damage and have the potential to spread further. So let's look at these situations, and if we say, you know what, this is a hoarder situation, or we've got stuff here that we haven't used for 5 years, we need to have a clean out. Let's get rid of all of that junk and move on. And here's the deal. You're probably not going to miss any of it. All right. Let's look at our flammable liquids. These are a real source of fire. And so flammable liquids should be stored outside of our buildings. If they are stored inside of our buildings, they need to be inside of a flammable storage cabinet, or for some of you out there, you actually have flammable storage rooms that are designed to be fire resistive, as well as the electrical systems are designed not to make a spark to ignite that. But let's not just have gas cans hanging around. If I've got gas cans, let's put those in a cabinet or a cage or something outdoors, or maybe I've got a shipping container out at the Public Works lot. I can put those in that shipping container, because if we lose that, well, that's not nearly as bad as losing the entire Public Workshop. So think about that. Use cabinets, flammable aerosols. So if you have aerosol cans, they can become rockets and light other things on fire. So let's look at where we store those. Put them inside of a flammable storage cabinet if we got it. If we don't, at minimum, put those inside of a metal cabinet. And I would also look at your inventories of those. If we've got aerosols that we haven't used in a long time, let's get rid of those things so we don't have those hanging around. Look at our buildings around. Take a hike around the buildings today and say, are we at risk if there's a fire in the neighborhood? Look at the type of fuels that you have. If you've got a bunch of cheatgrass around your lots, that's something that you need to deal with today, not when the fire is coming. So let's reduce those fuels. Think of the type of things that we plant or allow to grow around our buildings. We should build fire breaks and buffers around there, because if the fire is coming, we don't have time to deal with that. Think about our irrigation systems. Are those irrigation systems, our sprinklers for our vegetation, could those be used in the event that a fire is in the neighborhood to reduce the potential for fire getting to our facilities? That should all be part of our overall plan. Electrical fires are really common, and some of these involve welding. We go out to fix something and we pull our welding hood down over our face and we start an arc, and we don't realize that the brush surrounding us has caught on fire until it's gotten too far. So once again, like that hot work permit says, we've got to do those controls before we strike the arc, before we make the spark. Our electrical systems, years ago, it used to cost a lot of money to do thermal imaging of our electrical systems. Now, for a couple $100, you can buy a camera that you plug into your phone, and you can take a look at each one of those panels and see where you've got problems with your circuits. If I've got a circuit that the connections aren't great, they're going to heat up and potentially could cause a fire, potentially could cause equipment to fail. And so let's make that part of our plan as well. Deal with your cords. If you're using extension cords for more than just a couple of days, that's gonna, now technically the code is 90 days, but if you've got zip ties on an extension cord, that's not temporary wiring. If you're going through from one room to another with an extension cord, that is not temporary wiring. That's your building burning down in the future. So let's look at that. If I need electrical service somewhere, let's put it in. Let's not just put a Band-Aid on it. Extension cords are really only there for Christmas lights and for, temporary, I'm using this tool somewhere, so I got to get power to where I'm using that. Think about your battery backup. Don't store combustibles around those battery backups. Space heaters, we won't talk about that one because it's summer, it's hot out there. And number one rule on that, if you're not using it, unplug it. Fire suppression systems, inspect those things. Have those contractors come out for their annual inspections for both your sprinklers as well as your fire extinguishers. Some of those may be more often than an annual inspection. And then keep your stuff out from below your fire extinguisher. There should be at least 18 inches of clearance below the sprinklers so they can do their job and put the water out where it needs to be if a fire happens. If you impair your system, that the top of the organization needs to know that. So if we turn our fire sprinkler system off, top of the organization needs to know, your fire department should know, and and also your alarm company needs to know that we're impairing that system. This is really key. We've got to get those back up and running as soon as we possibly can because we don't have the protection there. All right. Make sure your fire extinguishers are inspected and train your people on how to use those. Track all of that equipment. I apologize. I've gone long. I should have known better on this one. Make sure that we're training our people. If you're using fire extinguishers, make sure you train them on pass and how to appropriately use those and what types of fires you can use for that. Make sure people are trained on where to evacuate and that, hey, you need to stay around until your head has been counted, until you're told that you can go somewhere else, because we need to have accountability on people. All right, we've talked about a lot of stuff, and I've got a little bit long here. Sorry for that. Before I hit the summary, if you do have questions or comments, please type those in the chat box, and I will answer those in just a second. And just on these, to summarize this, know what your exposures are. Some people have very different fire exposures than others. Some have extreme fire exposures right now this week due to the conditions that we have. plan and prepare for these things specific to what your exposures are. If you have questions on these things, give me a call, give Mike a call, and we're happy to take a look. We're happy to give you some consultation on that and help you plan and prepare for those things. Regularly review all of those preparations, and when you need it, you'll be ready for it. Folks, thanks so much for all you do. Appreciate all of your work out there to make Utah a safer place. Go out and have a safe day.